So let's start off, before we get to Trump, let's start off with what we know and the questions that we need to answer about Israel, because just cut back from there, obviously, and things are transpiring quicker than I can keep my mind around. But the first thing is, why is Hamas still alive? They should be eliminated by now. Well, Biden didn't want Israel to win. That's first of all. So we have to have that under our belts. That the fact that they're even existing to this day is the problem of Biden. Now, Biden, what he did, as you guys probably remember, is wanted an unlimited supply to Hamas of what they call humanitarian aid, which is nothing but a euphemism for resupplying Hamas. And so that's what the Biden administration was doing. That's why Hamas is still alive. That's why the hostages are still being kept, and why we've reached this state now in Trump's presidency, and we're still dealing with Hamas. They should be eliminated. But anyway, they're here still. And anyway, what happened is, and I want to set the record straight on aid, okay? So Qatar has been giving aid. They send 600 trucks in a day. United States have been sending aid, and other people have been sending aid, or nations, I should say, sending aid. And they still accuse Israel of starving these people out, which is false. Here's what would happen to the aid. Whether we talk to people on the ground or I can verify this with articles. Hamas would seize the aid as the trucks came in. It was like a mob. And our guys would say that they would just surround the trucks and just seize them. And you're talking about 600 trucks coming in a day in Gaza. And then Hamas would take it and distribute it first to its fighters, okay, and give them the food and whatnot. Then they would distribute it to their supporters. And then whatever was left, they would go sell it on the open market and then use that to recruit people into Hamas's ranks. And that's why a lot of well, I shouldn't say a lot, the majority, high majority of the Palestinians were bought off by Hamas, and that's why they support Hamas, and that's why they were totally fine with what happened on October 7th, because there was a pay-to-play type of thing. You get money from us and food if you support us. So that's what was going on. This is what the Biden administration and Qatar were and are contributing to. Okay, so then the other thing I want to bring to our attention is the political left in Israel. As you know, Israel has a political left. They also have a deep state, just like we do. So what you want to think about when you're talking about Israel is you want to compare the United States and Israel. The United States, the bigger issue, and Israel, the smaller issue. But they're almost identical in the fact that they both have deep states and they both have a ruling political class, the leftists, and they're leftists. So here's what happens. In Israel, so you can understand the political dynamics, you have the political left that includes the judicial wing of their government. Okay, that's why Netanyahu was wanting judicial reforms, because you had a tyrannical judicial arm, just like we do in many cases, like the Ninth Circuit or whatever, that rule from the bench. They don't do their job of interpreting law. They actually make law from the bench. And that's what was happening in Israel and continues to happen, because leftists have been placed in the judiciary branch of Israel's government, and it's caused problems. Along with them is the general staff of the IDF. So when we're dealing with our IDF troops, they're just normal guys, okay? They get it, they understand what's happening, and they're infuriated of this hostage deal. But the general staff is a whole different ballgame. You can only go to this level in the military if you're a political appointee. Okay, it's not like you earn your way up. You get to a certain level, and I can't remember what they told us, like you get to the level captain or colonel or something like that, and then past that, you have to be politically appointed. So the general staff of the IDF is all politically appointees by leftists, okay? So this is why the general staff was working hand in hand with Blinken and the Biden administration, and slow walking this whole thing about Hamas and the hostages and arms and stuff like that. Along with them is Shin Bet, another intelligence agency in Israel that's part of the problem. And of course, their media. The media in Israel is like our CNN, like our, NBC, ABC, CBS, all that. They are totally subverting what's going on in Israel. Okay, so there's a division in Israel. Okay, you have to understand this. So what they did, and we have noticed this when we were driving around, it's free the hostages now, and then even they have signs with expletives about the hostages. And what happened was the narrative changed in Israel because of the political left to free the hostages at all costs versus what the original narrative was, which was defeat Hamas, win the war, and get our hostages back. So the political left in Israel capitalized on the hostages and turned that into the talking point and made it at all costs. And that's what ended up happening. And so it painted a picture of Netanyahu, and again, this was all political, of him wanting to prolong this war so he can stay in power, and he's refusing to make a deal with the hostages. Well, look, if I was there and you were there, I'd be sitting there thinking, well, what hostage deal do you really want to make? Because I'm not going to make a deal that hurts our nation. But they kept pressuring Netanyahu, saying, this is all political, he's all political, and he needs to be thrown away and thrown out, yada, yada, yada. And that was coming from the left, okay? And then that made its way into our left and made its way into our media and stuff like that. So our media hates Netanyahu just as much as they hate Trump, okay? And so the left said, there's no purpose in fighting, and they started saying, we need to save the soul of Israel. We need to save the soul of Israel, and the only way to save the soul of Israel is we've got to get these hostages back at all costs to save the soul of Israel. Okay, but at what price? What are you talking about? And that became the mantra. And of course, they wanted to oust Netanyahu. They wanted him gone because of the political left. So anyway, that's what was going on. So again, just a review of a few things. The general staff are complete incompetent. They failed October 7th, and they have failed ever since this happened. Who am I talking about? Here's a dereliction of duty. This is a shadow government that's been undermining Netanyahu. It's Major General Oded Basyuk, General Yaron Finkelman, he's already resigned, General Aaron Haliva, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, Shin Bet's Ronan Bar, and their subordinates, okay? These guys are like General Milley, okay? Does that make sense? I want to compare the two so you can understand. So the IDF guys that we're dealing with are under General Milley, so to speak. That kind of nonsense, right? And they're sitting there scratching their heads because they don't understand the strategic moves of what the generals are doing. For instance, I'll give you an example. The generals are allowing Israel, the IDF, go into Hamas or whatever, get territory in Gaza, and then they leave it. And then you know what the Hamas does? They go back in there, reclaim the area, and booby trap it again. So Israel's generals gets area and then relinquishes it back to Hamas. And this is what's driving the IDF soldiers nutty, saying, what in the world are we doing here? What are these guys doing? Well, here's what we found out about them. They all did not share the warnings with Netanyahu. Okay? None of them did. In fact, they deliberately blocked information to Netanyahu. In fact, when they briefed Netanyahu about Hamas, they said Hamas was deterred. And they told Netanyahu he just simply needs to provide more cash from Qatar and give work permits to the Gazans, and they're deterred. They're not going to do anything. That's what they were telling Netanyahu. Okay? So when people want to blame Netanyahu, he wasn't in the know. These are what the generals were telling him. It's these guys right here that are the culprits for October 7th. And why the hostages haven't been, why Hamas has not been eliminated, and why we don't have the hostages back at this point in time. They openly accused Netanyahu of blocking the hostage deal, which is a lie. They and their subordinates were the ones that leaked to the media Israel's internal decisions about the hostages, which used to justify their refusal to make a deal. And they disputed Netanyahu's plans to advance military operations in Gaza and Lebanon. So these are the guys that were messing things up and have been messing things up, okay? So what we have then is no successor regime to take over, and the majority of Israelis do not want to support a two-state solution. Okay, now that's what we know. Now let's bring us up to speed on where we're at now, and we'll get into what Trump did this week. So this guy apparently has been given the privilege of special envoy to Israel. This is Steve Witkoff. This guy's a billionaire, okay? I don't know where he comes from. I don't know his understanding of Middle East policy. I don't think he understands anything about what's going on in the Middle East. And oh, by the way, lurking in the shadows is the little, I don't know what you want to call him. Jerk? I don't know. Maybe that. Jerkweed? Jared Kushner. Okay? He is lurking behind this, okay? I pray that Trump wakes up to this Steve Witkoff guy, and he wakes up to Jared Kushner, his son-in-law. Jared Kushner, and I'll show you in just a bit, has taken money from Saudi Arabia, over $1 billion, and has taken $1.4 million from Qatari to pay for his New York real estate that went belly up. So Jared Kushner is no one to trust at all, and he doesn't know the Middle East, okay? And yet he did the Abrahamic Accords, which divided Israel and shared Jerusalem with the Palestinians, which was no good, no good. This is where you and I need to be praying for Trump, okay? This is where you have people surrounding Trump that are really not thinking biblically, not thinking in correct ways. Okay, so here comes Witkoff, and he pressured Israel into making every possible concession to Hamas by making Israel agree to Biden's administration's May 27th proposal. I don't know. I don't know how this happened, guys. Witkoff and his allies in the Trump transition team, some of which are associated with the pro-Iran Koch network. So the Koch network, if you do any investigation, they are very pro-Iranian. Okay? And what do you mean pro-Iranian? Well, they want, a lot of these people believe, I know this is insane, but they think that having Iran be a superpower in the Middle East settles down the Middle East. It's, which I know, it's stupid, right? That's stupid. No one in this room would ever think like that, but they do. They're stupid. This is what happens like Romans 1 mind. Your mind becomes darkened, your heart becomes darkened, your mind becomes depraved. So in their concept is that if you give Iran what it wants, nuclear capabilities, then it will calm everyone, all their proxies in the region down, and you won't have any problem with Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, or whatever, okay? Which is stupid. That's stupid foreign policy, dumb Obama type of mentality of propping up Iran and giving them hegemony. In the Middle East. Well, that's what this is. That's what this pro-Iran Koch network, that's what they think, okay? So basically they got Trump, and I don't know the conversation they had. Maybe Trump said, go make a deal, and he left it to their hands. I don't know. But basically, Trump then allowed this guy, Witkoff, to go and push this deal on Israel, and it puts us in a nation-building project in the Gaza. And you already heard Trump, what he's saying about the Gaza. But this deal is getting us involved, okay? And eventually could put soldiers on the ground. In fact, we have, like I said on Sunday, we already have ex-veterans and CIA operatives, ex-CIA operatives already on the ground in northern Gaza right now, letting the people come up north. Okay, so here's what we know so far. The deal foisted on Trump by Biden, Qatar, and Qatar is no good. I'm going to show you in just a bit what they're up to. Witkoff and the Koch network, which basically saves Hamas and puts terrorists back in power. So let me give you the hostage stage. There's 3 stages. All 3 stages must be negotiated with. So we're in the first stage. So in the first stage, this is what we came upon when we were in Israel the last 2 weeks. We came upon a lot of IDF guys that are ticked. Why? Because the first stage includes a release of 33 hostages, but close to 2,000 terrorists must be released from Israeli prisons for the deal. So I honestly, I'm sit there, one of our soldiers that we're good friends with, he said like he couldn't move for a day, he was telling me. He was so stunned by this that, and I said, well, what do you mean? And he goes, well, it was because we had done so much, and then all of this just blows up in our face, and then Hamas wins. So like, what are we fighting for then? If we're going to allow 2,000 terrorists back into the civilian population for 33 hostages, most of which are probably dead, we're not understanding this. Well, I understand his dilemma because the top echelon of the IDF thinks crazy. They think this is fine. And somehow Netanyahu was forced into it. I don't know. So here's what it means. These guys are not people that just stole something from Rite Aid. These are guys who are terrorists that have life sentences. And one of the IDF soldiers that we were running around with, he was saying, there's no death penalty in Israel. So when they put these terrorists in jail, they just stay forever in jail. So then they become part of this hostage release thing. So you got somebody that would be theoretically should have capital punishment and be killed by capital punishment running around in your streets. So now we were interviewing Yair Pinto, and he's saying, imagine, he goes, Brandon, imagine like we were in Jerusalem. He goes, right behind me is East Jerusalem. So those people are going to be released in East Jerusalem. He goes, your hotel is in West Jerusalem. He goes, you realize that guy could be released and walk down the Kidron Valley and come up and kill you at your hotel. That's how close you are now. And that's what's happened to Judea and Samaria and different parts around Israel. These guys are going back. And you know, Judea and Samaria is a mixture of, you have Jewish people living there along with so-called Palestinians, which are really ex-Jordanians. So these terrorists are going back in there. Now, of course, IDF is on high alert. They're zoning in on these guys and watching them. But still, would you be comfortable saying, okay, come back in my neighborhood. I know you blew up a pizza parlor and you blew up a bus, but we're going to have you live 2 houses down from me in Judea and Samaria. No, you wouldn't. That's insane. And it's like Carolyn Glick said, in one of her articles, and she made a point, we are now sacrificing the whole country's national security for the hostages. And it's funny that last Sunday, we were in a situation, reading the text of with Jacob and he won't let Benjamin go down into Egypt, and Joseph is demanding that and saying, you guys want to eat, you better bring Benjamin with you. And Jacob is pulling this stunt like, I don't really want to give Benjamin up. And Judah has to come and wake him up and saying, hey, Dad, you understand, if you don't let us go down and take Benjamin with us, we all die. So you are sacrificing our national interest for the sake of one individual. And I thought that was so eerie because I was telling the guys in the car when we were driving around Israel, I said, oh my goodness, I'm studying the same thing that they did thousands of years ago, and Israel just did the same deal. We are going to sacrifice national security for the sake of 33 hostages, which most of them are dead. Now, I'm not saying that Benjamin's not important. We're not saying the hostages are not important. But we don't do a deal where more people can get killed. That's crazy. We don't do a deal where we throw 2,000 terrorists into our community and say, well, I hope they've seen the light. Who does that? Well, Israel did it. Israel did it. And that's very concerning. That's why a lot of our guys were like really, one guy was really bothered by this. You could tell it hurt him because, hey, what are we doing this for? Are we in this to win this or what? So, second phase and third phase have not happened yet. Trump even said may not happen. Okay, so we'll see. But second phase is this: return the remaining lives that are living, but Hamas retains the dead bodies. I don't understand this. So the hostages, Israel must cede control of Gaza to Hamas. Full Israeli withdrawal, Hamas survives. And it's the second stage. Now, Trump has changed the game a little bit by what he said, and I'll show you that in just a bit. But if that is to happen, the second phase, where you get the live people alive, but they keep retaining the bodies, and then Israel has to withdraw from the Gaza, then Hamas wins. And I don't see anything around that. Third phase, Hamas returns the dead bodies. Hamas establishes a proto-state controlled by them. Okay, that's crazy. And again, I'm not saying that second and third phase, but this is what the deal was. These are the three stages that went forward. I don't know how. I don't know how. Okay, so let's mention Qatar. I'm sorry. Qatar's all involved in this deal. Qatar's involved with Jared Kushner. Qatar is trying to insert themselves into being some middleman broker, negotiating deals with Hamas, with the United States and Israel. And it's like, hey, somebody needs to tell Trump, or somebody in his cabinet needs to say, Qatar is the largest supporter of Wahhabism in the world. It's one of the largest state sponsors of terrorism in the world, second to Iran. They're paying for everything. And they need to be designated as a terrorist state because they want to destroy Western society. So let's look at this as Qatar as a mediator that's involved in this deal. Qatar has embedded themselves into Hamas's conflict by supplying so-called humanitarian aid. Okay? Again, humanitarian aid means supporting Hamas and basically giving cash payments to pay salaries of whomever they want. Okay? Which caused the international community and even the West to accuse Israel of starving the Gazans. So that's where Qatar comes to the rescue and says, we'll supply, we'll do this, and so you be the mediator, you can negotiate. But all they are is paying their way. They are in much as support as what Hamas is doing to Israel as anyone else. So Qatar gave money to the Gazans. They funded and sanitized Hamas, and this allowed Hamas the money to build its terroristic zone. So, here's what ends up happening. The West, including the United States, has given billions of dollars to Hamas, okay? That's a fact. So, when you have the infusion of Qatar's money, they didn't need Qatar's money. And according to IDF military surveillance, which is 24 hours on this place, Israel's military saw that Gaza was actually a very thriving place with palatial residences, stacks of cash everywhere in the homes, gilded items, handmade types of gilded items, and designer clothes, 5-star hotels, and restaurants. This is before, the war started. So according to the IDF, these people were living on the hog because of not only United States money, but Qatar's money that was funneling into the place as well. And you know that they built the tunnels, they built all the stuff and everything, but Qatar is behind it. Let me show you who Qatar funds. Qatar funds Al-Qaeda, Sudan, Afghanistan, Tunisia, Turkey, the Muslim Brotherhood, Libya, and all anti-Israel and they're all anti-Israel and anti-American. I don't think I would trust them how come no one's telling Trump this? Maybe because Jared Kushner is doing a deal with Qatar. Who knows? Or Witkoff is doing the deal. Okay, we have to watch this play out. But this is why you need to focus your prayers on helping Trump, because you can see if Jared Kushner's in bed with Qatar and Qatar's pretending to like this middleman, nice guy type of guy, Wahhabism doesn't want to see any Jews alive, and neither does it want to see the West. These guys need to be eliminated. Let's bring in the Trump effect. So Trump wants to end endless wars. Okay. The wars will continue if he follows through on stage 2 and 3. That's a guarantee. If he doesn't want war, he can't let stage 2 and 3 happen. You can't let Hamas take over Gaza. You can't. Okay? Reports suggest that Trump is insisting that Israel withdraw its troops from Lebanon and urging Israel not to attack Iran's nuclear installations at this point. Again, I don't know why, but we'll see what happens. We now know that he wants the Palestinians to leave the area. So that's a game change, okay? So the Netanyahu is at Washington, meets with Trump advisors, and I'm glad they did this. They sat Witkoff in front of the atrocity film and let him watch it for 47 minutes, which they needed to. Because here's the thing, and it goes back to who in the world appointed this Witkoff guy who hasn't even seen that video of the atrocities. I would never appoint anybody that doesn't understand what happened. It's weird, okay? So this is Israel's people, Danny Danon. We met Trump's people. We have conversations. We know they were looking at the Gaza demolition zone and that something major had to be done, but I think we were not aware about how much the United States will be involved. Still, it will be challenging. You have to admit the United Nations will still be a hostile place, but with the moral clarity of Israel and the power of the United States, we can start to shift the narrative. Okay, so as you probably heard then, Trump makes this announcement, and again, we don't know if he's just lighting off a bomb to get people's reaction or what he's doing. But sometimes he means what he says. We're going to take over Gaza. And here's him talking about it.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years.
So he says beautiful things could be done over there, fantastic things. He suggested and asked if he'll help rebuild Gaza. Trump says, I might. The area of Gaza, you have to understand that area is a very beautiful, picturesque area. Of course, you know, it's a demolition zone right now. But when Israel had control of the Gaza area, that thing was a paradise, man. It's like living in San Diego. Perfect weather. It had a perfect climate for growing all kinds of crops. And when Israel was controlling it before 2005, they had nurseries, they had all kinds of things going. It was absolutely beautiful there, really beautiful. And then, of course, they gave it over and abandoned it to the Palestinians, and then they turned it into a nightmare. But if you're understanding what Trump's going at, he's seeing this as some type of business potential type thing going on there. And that's when he says fantastic things, beautiful things, he's talking about building projects and stuff like that, because the place could be another Dubai, if that makes sense, okay? It has the potential of a lot of things. He continues on, he says, I'd like to get them living in an area, talking about the Palestinians, where they could live without disruption, revolution, and violence. When you look at the Gaza Strip, it's been hell for so many years. There have been various civilizations on that strip. It didn't start here. It started thousands of years before, and there's always been violence associated with it. You could get people living in areas that are a lot safer and maybe a lot better and maybe a lot more comfortable. And here's his meeting with Netanyahu when he was there.
Would Palestinians have the right to return to Gaza if they left while the rebuilding was happening?
It would be my hope that we could do something really nice, really good, where they wouldn't want to return. Why would they want to return? The place has been hell. It's been one of the meanest, toughest places on earth. And right now, I've seen every picture from every angle, better than if I were there. And nobody can live there. You can't live there. So if we can build them through massive amounts of money supplied by other people, very rich nations, and they're willing to supply it. If we can build something for them in one of the countries, and it could be Jordan, it could be Egypt, it could be other countries, and you could build 4 or 5 or 6 areas. It doesn't have to be one area, but you take certain areas and you build really good quality housing, like a beautiful town, like someplace where they can live and not die, because Gaza is a guarantee that they're going to end up dying. The same thing's going to happen again. It's happened over and over again, and it's going to happen again as sure as you're standing there, Peter. So I hope that we could do something where they wouldn't want to go back. Who would want to go back? They've experienced nothing but death and destruction.
So anyway, Netanyahu got him a golden pager, by the way, when he visited him. So that was pretty cool, pretty funny. But Trump insists that both Egyptian and Jordanian leaders would do it. What do you mean do it? Take them in. And so he's kind of putting the pressure on Jordan and Egypt, which, the funny thing about the Palestinians, there's no such thing as a Palestinian. That came in 1964. What the Palestinians are ex-Jordanians. That's all they are. They're Jordanian refugees. Jordan should take them in. But the problem, the last time that Jordan decided to take them in, it almost caused a civil war. Egypt took them in last time, and they were a disaster, and they wanted them out. They took them in Lebanon, and Lebanon didn't want them either because they caused so many problems. There's just something wrong with this people group, okay? That's all I'm saying. But Trump is indicating that he's going to force them to do it. He goes, I'd love to do that. I wish Sisi, that's the head of Egypt, would take some. We helped him a lot. I'm sure he'd help us. He's a friend of mine. He's in a rough neighborhood, but I think he would do it. I think the king of Jordan would do it too, Trump adds. And then regarding to Egypt and Jordan, a reporter asks, is there anything you can do to make them do that? I mean, tariffs against those countries, for example? And Trump says, they will do it. They will do it. They're going to do it. Okay? Trump said, okay. We do a lot for them, and they're going to do it. So he said it 3 times, or 4 times. They're going to do it. So I don't know what Trump's cooking up, and what, and maybe that's just Trump being Trump. I don't know. But he gets a lot done. He's been accomplishing a lot in 2 weeks. If anyone can do it, it would be him with Jordan and Egypt. So I don't know. We'll have to see. And again, we need to be praying for the president for wisdom and understanding, and that people would come alongside of him and try to explain a lot of things that, hey, you got to let Israel take control of that, not the United States. We do not want to get on the ground there. That's not a good thing. It's not only good for our soldiers, because they even hinted that we might, if we take control of that, we would put soldiers on the ground. You don't want to go there, because then it starts all kinds of problems. They backed up a little bit amid the uproar. Obviously, a lot of heads exploded when he said that, as you can imagine. So they kind of toned it down and said, well, we'll temporarily remove the Gazans. So we'll see what happens on that. Funny people have been messing around with AI and Gaza. And so they have AI'd what Gaza would look like under Trump, with which is kind of par for the course, right? Someone sent me this today. I thought that was good. Pretty funny. And Trump Golf Course Casino coming to Gaza 2025. So they're having fun with it, obviously, with the memes going around and stuff like that. Instead of Gaza Strip, MAGA Strip. So it's tongue in cheek. And you got to know too, when you're dealing with Trump, sometimes you can't take him too seriously, because if you ever read the book Art of the Deal, that's how he does deals. He goes in there and lights off, sets off a grenade and it explodes, and everyone goes back on their heels and like, oh my goodness, he's going to take over Canada. And that's not what he was trying to do. He's trying to set them back on their heels, and then he gets what he wants. He gets a deal out of that. I'm going to take over Greenland, and then all of a sudden, no, or whatever. I'm going to put a 25% tariff. Oh, no. I'll fly the plane up to you and get the criminals. And if you start watching, if you're not catching on, that's kind of his art of the deal, right? I'm going to be bombastic. I'm going to say something so off the wall it's going to make your head explode. But in the end, I will get what I want. And I think what he wants is, he wants the Jordanians and the Egyptians to take these Palestinians in. And so that's where you have to understand what Trump's trying to do. He's playing, I've come to appreciate this about Trump. He's playing four-dimensional chess. He is way ahead of a lot of people. And I think this is showing us how intelligent I think Trump is. You have to be pretty business-minded to be that. Israel had no idea he was going to say this, by the way. No idea. They sit down with him. He says, what about the United States taking control of Gaza? And they're like, what did you just say? All their staff was not ready for that. Bibi was not ready for that. He just, out of the left field, man. They're like, well, I never even thought of that. And you have to appreciate that, because he's doing things to set people off and gets them off the rocker and gets them to thinking outside the box. And wow, does that guy really mean that? Well, if he's going to put a 25% tariff, man, that's going to really mess us up. We got to comply. And before you know it, he gets within 2 weeks. Look at all he's done. He's getting ready to eliminate the Department of Education. Thank God. Wow. That's amazing, right? And then they're uncovering this U.S. aid thing, and I got a whole list of where all of our money was going to, all these transgender things in Colombia or wherever, and it was crazy. And all this stuff's coming out, the JFK files are going to come out, and all these other things are coming out. He's lighting the world on fire. But what you've realized, it's called the Trump effect. Now, as a believer, you have to see what this is doing. It's shaking and rocking the world. It's shaking the WEF. It's shaking the UN. It's shaking all liberal states around the world. It's shaking the Muslim world, and they don't know what to do about it. So it's a weird thing to watch in many regards. But this is the other guy that's a little snake in the grass. That's what I want to call him, the little snake in the grass, Jared Kushner. I can't stand this guy. I think what he did with the Abrahamic Accords was totally anti-Israel. Even though he's Jewish, he should know better than to divide the land. He should know better, but he did it, and he's doing it again. So, like I mentioned, he is behind his father-in-law Gaza plan. Okay, Kushner, originally a real estate scion, now runs a private equity firm fueled by investments from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. I don't do business with any Muslim states. If I was had his money, would you? Do you trust Qatar? Do you trust Saudi? I don't, but he does. He does. He remains involved behind the scenes, advising on Trump's Middle Eastern strategy. Well, that's funny, because him and Ivanka said they weren't going to get involved. But they are. I don't trust him, man. I just don't trust him. So he's been helping select appointees and guiding certain cabinet members through the transition. A source familiar within this work recently told Reuters. He's not publicly saying he's doing it, but he's doing it behind the scenes. This is the guy to watch out for. Okay, this is the guy. Okay? One of the things I want to just mention to us, because I think this is important for all of us Bible students, this is 101, okay? This is Joel chapter 3, talking about when Jesus is doing the final judgment, the sheep and goat judgment at the end of the tribulation of who goes into the kingdom, and this is the judgment of the nations. Watch what Jesus says about what they have done to Israel, okay? For behold, in those days and at that time, I will bring back the captives of Judah and Jerusalem, Israel. And I will gather all the nations, the Goyim, and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. That's the Kidron Valley, the new valley that's created when he steps foot on the Mount of Olives. And I will enter into judgment with them there on account of my people, my heritage, Israel, to make everyone clear, it's not the church, it's my heritage, Israel. Thank you very much. Whom they have scattered among the nations. So they caused them to scatter in the diaspora. They have also divided up my land. Okay? They have cast lots for my people, and they have given a boy as payment for a harlot, so slavery. And sold a girl for wine that they may drink. So this is slavery. Indeed, what have you to do with me, O Tyre and Sidon? And look at the last phrase. And all the coasts of Philistia. Where is... Thank you. Is that an accident? No, it's not an accident. Joel chapter 3 mentions Philistia, which is the ancient site of where the Philistines were, which was the Gaza Strip. So... right there, this is Joel chapter 3 on account of Israel. And the big ticket item that the United States and someone needs to warn Trump. Trump, maybe you're lighting off a grenade, but we cannot control a part of Israel because Israel has to control that according to Joel chapter 3, the Abrahamic covenant, the land covenant. No one can control it, not Arabs, not the United States. Israel has to control it. Israel has to control the Gaza Strip, no one else. Now, can we help them? Absolutely. Absolutely can we help them? Of course. Can we give them aid? Of course. But at the end of the day, Israel has to control Israel. It can't be under the United States or anyone else for that matter. And that's why I'm hoping like guys like Huckabee, who knows our eschatology, or somebody can say, hey, look, man, it's one thing to help them and help Israel rebuild that place and give them money. It's another thing of saying you're going to take control of that area. You can't take control of that area. You have to back off and let them control the area. Otherwise, you're going to be in violation of dividing the land. And that's what I hope doesn't happen because, man, that's right there. You can get a curse because of that. You can't divide the land. This is why I don't like Jared Kushner, because he violated that in the Abrahamic Accords. He divided the land and he divided Jerusalem. That's a no-go. And you don't want the cursing from that. You can't do that. That's a cursing of Israel if you try to take their land or divide their land up. So that's what we need to pay attention to. So my thing to you is you need to pray for Trump and you need to pray that the snakes around him dissipate and are found out or whatever, because I will end on this. When Phil Haney was alive, and Trump was in office the first time, he said, Brandon, I'm going to go back and work for the Department of Homeland Security. And I said, Phil, I said, why would you want to do that? You were already there. You already went through the Obama and Hillary mess and all that junk with them. And he said this to me. He goes, Brandon, I want to help Trump out. He goes, there are a lot of mice around Trump, and there's no cat. And he goes, I want to be the cat for him. And a month later, Phil was suicided by the deep state. You all need to pray for Trump and pray for discernment and pray these little weasels like Jared out of the equation. okay? Because he's working deals behind the scenes. And, that was the problem last time, okay? So that's what we need to keep in mind. Let's keep our eyes on Israel, okay? Let's end in a word of prayer. Father, thank you, Lord, for what we can learn about what's going on in the world. And